I am very lucky to have such a beautiful headpiece on such a beautiful model. And so now I have to begin with, well, where do I begin? How am I going to light this? And I can actually see this being photographed in two drastically different ways. I can envision this piece and the subject being photographed bright and sunny and glowing. And I can also see it being photographed darker and more mysterious and maybe a little bit heavier in the shadows, more about texture. So it could go either way, and there's never any right or wrong way to light your subject. It depends on what you're trying to say. So what I'm actually going to do and what I'm going to illustrate in this particular demonstration is I am going to shoot it two ways. And I'm not exactly sure what one will be, but one will be high key, one will be low key. And remember, high key is predominantly lighter tones. Typically, this is going to be things that are a little bit more joyful and upbeat. And then one that's a little bit more low key, predominantly darker tones, typically more mysterious, a little bit more emotive and moody. So I think I'm going to start with the higher key. And what that means is I need brighter tones, brighter background, fewer shadows. So that to me already says white background of some sort. Fewer shadows means I want my light maybe centered. And then also fewer shadows means probably a reflector to fill those in. So all of these things are leading to that higher key tone. So that is where I'm going to begin. So first of all, I think I'm going to go slightly unconventional with the main light. I'm going to try to make it look a little bit sunnier. And so I could go with bare bulb, or maybe I could do a beauty dish, but I wanted to do something that many photographers have access to, which is a silver zoom reflector. Remember, this emphasizes textures, which for skin may not be a good thing, but when she has that metallic headpiece, it's really going to emphasize the shininess of it. So I think it'll actually work quite well. If you have somebody with less good skin, just know that there would be more retouching if you lit this way. But since I'm going to center my lights and have fill, well, that fill fills in underneath the shadows and texture, so it actually might not be that bad. So let me start with the zoom reflector. Let's see. And like I said, I want to have it centered or mostly centered to begin with. So maybe somewhere around here. And I'm not entirely positive how I'll have her pose. I know that most of the leaves are on the right-hand side, so I know I won't have her posing that direction because it'll hide them, but either straight on or towards the left of the frame, one of those two ways. So I'll get my light mostly centered. I have no idea what the exposure is, so let me give this a test, and I may need to adjust. Okay, so definitely my first shot was too bright, and I need my meter. All right, so I know that I want to shoot at my usual camera settings, which is 1/200th of a second, f11, ISO 200. So I'm going to aim to get somewhere around there. And I already said it was too bright, so let me turn it down a bit. Let's give this a try. So that was f10. Let me turn up a little bit. I know I'm going to be adding a reflector underneath, so that usually makes the exposure even brighter because it catches more light. So even if I'm a little shy of f11, it'll actually probably end up fine. Okay, so f11 exactly. Let's test this again. Make sure I'm not overexposed. Just getting me close. Let's see, perfect. Okay, so now I have a correctly exposed starting point. Now if you look, yes, it is very contrasty light. The highlights are really bright, the shadows are really dark, but I want that bathed in sun look so it works. Most of the time I wouldn't recommend this for a portrait, but just keep in mind, what is the purpose of the shot? In the other version of this shot, when I go lower key, I won't be using the zoom reflector. All right, so the next piece of the equation I said I wanted to do would be a high key look. High key background, for me, it's going to be white. I could take two lights and point them at the background, turn them up full power, completely white that out, or put a white background there and light it. But instead I'm going to do a setup that I do all the time, which is placing a 3x4 foot softbox directly behind the subject. Gives me a pure white background, and it allows me to control how the light wraps around the subject based on how close it is to her. So let me grab that softbox. And let's see. And I want it to wrap a lot, so I'm going to bring it up really close. Did I hit you yet? No, not yet. All right, we're going to try there, okay? And let's see. Again, for this one, it's really hard to meter because depending on where you meter, the exposure changes so drastically. So I'm just gonna start with it and then build. If I want it brighter, I'll turn it up. And I need to center it just a little bit better. Can you lean forward just a little bit? All right, let's try it there. All right, so let me give this a test. Perfect. Pretty good. It's a nice pure white background. I think I want it to wrap around her a little bit more. As I examine it, I'm getting a little light on the neck and a little light on the face, but I want even more wrap. So I'm gonna bring it a little closer up to her. It is really close, but just a tiny bit further. And then I'm gonna turn up the power about a stop. So let's turn the power up a stop. And bring it in just a tiny bit closer. Okay. Good. All right, great. Beautiful. Right there's perfect. All right, so I'm getting that bright sunny look. Good. I've got that light wrapping around her. I could go even brighter. I think this is probably fine. But then there's that last part of the equation. If I'm going high key, I don't want to have a lot of shadows. And if I look, there's some dark shadows underneath the neck. I mean, they're not killing the shot, but I think I'm gonna add a bit of reflection underneath. So I'm gonna grab a silver reflector. And I've got the reflector on a stand. And the thing I have to watch out for is if this zoom reflector is pointed too far up, I'm not gonna catch any light in the reflector. I actually have to have it pointed down enough that it can catch some. So let's see. And it'll catch a little bit of light off the background as well. All right, let's try it there. And I'm moving the reflector so I could see some reflection. I think right there. I think that's good. Let's test this. Great. And give me a little more shape to the front shoulder, just a little. Perfect. And chin back to me. And chin up. Good. All right, let's take a look. All right, cool. So I just noticed that if I have her look at me and bring her chin down, I start to get a little bit of darkness in the eyes. Thankfully, the reflector underneath is bouncing light, so I get some nice catch lights. I do like the light wrapping around her face. So I like the face neutral or up a little bit, not too far down, and straight on or slightly to the side to get a little bit more of that wrap. So this is gonna be my high key version. Looks pretty good. I may need, can you lean forward really far again? Lean forward this way. I may need just to adjust my light so it's a little bit more centered, because if it's here and she moves, then it's pointed more at her shoulder. So I just need to keep the movement of the subject in mind. So I think this will be good. Great. All right, let's test here. Perfect. And then chin back to me a little more. And then chin up. And then chin straight back at me. Right there, beautiful. And then a little bit to your right, just a little. Good. Oh, very shiny and pretty. I like them all. Oh, beautiful. I like your chin up. That looks really nice there. A little less right there. And let's create some shape with your shoulders. Beautiful. All right, cool. Now, one variation on this is if I want even more light wrapping around, I'm gonna just try rotating the softbox. Sorry. I'm gonna rotate the softbox, make sure it's raised up. And then, can you do where you lean, roughly where you lean when you do this? You like lean forward this way? So I'll just do this. And so what it's going to do is it'll give me a little bit more distance on this side. And it's gonna wrap around even more. So let's see, turn back this way and do your little neck out. Let's see, pretty. But I noticed my zoom reflector is pointed slightly the wrong place. Yeah, do that, that's perfect just as it is. Let me just make sure my reflector is pointed at your face and I'm not missing. And then she's a little bit lower, so I'm gonna lower the zoom reflector just a bit. I think there is gonna be good. Okay, let's test this, perfect. Great. And right where you are is perfect with the shoulder. but just bend the elbow back. Creates better shape. See, that's not as round, it's a little more angular. And then rotate towards me just a little. Good. And then chin up. Beautiful. Those look great. Okay, and then try a couple more where I see your shoulders towards me, and then I think I've got the shot. So turn just a little this way. Good. And then head can come back towards me. And turn your shoulders to the right more. What I'm looking for, see right there, turn towards me, come back even more. I get a little bit of light on her shoulders, on her clavicles, but turn back to the right, right there, it starts raking across her shoulders. So that's actually what I was looking for in the angles of turning her. Perfect. And bend your back arm just like that. Great. And now lean forward a little bit because she was out of my light. Great. Oh, so pretty. And then head towards me even more. Beautiful. Perfect. All right, so I've definitely got the high key shot. If I look at my histogram, and I'm popping over here to take a look. All right, so I go to the develop module with the shortcut of D, and in the right-hand corner, the top right, there is a little triangle that I click on. It shows me the pure whites. And so actually, it's just pure white behind her head. So it's not actually blown out detail. If I need to bring any of that back in, all of that information is still there. It just happens to be that if you look at the histogram, it looks overexposed, but it's not. It's a high key image. Most of the information will be on the right side or the brighter part of the histogram, so it's not wrong at all. And then I can actually increase the contrast to bring in a little bit more of a true black, and that will make it look not as washed out. So I will go through and I'll process these, improve the clarity and the contrast, and apply it across the images so that the fact that it's backlit doesn't give me a flat photo. That's often what happens if I shoot a high key shot like this. I'm shooting directly into a light source. That light hits the lens, it bounces around, and it gives me a flatter image. So I usually do need to add a little bit of clarity and contrast so that I don't have that problem. So looking at these shots, I have a ton of beautiful shapes and beautiful light that I love. So let me explain this one more time, and then we'll switch over and I'll try something low key. So taking a look at this, I wanted something sunny and high key. So it means minimal shadows. So I picked a high contrast light source, really high contrast, which is a zoom reflector. It's silver. And I centered it. So what that'll do is give me bright highlights, really crisp texture, but centered minimizes the shadows. And then by popping a silver reflector underneath, it's catching a little bit of that light and filling in the shadows underneath the face. But also because it's silver, it's more specular, meaning more texture, more contrast, more of that sunny look. And then behind her for that high key look, I've added the 3x4 foot softbox, but I put it up really nice and close behind her so that light wraps around her. And then I've also turned it horizontally because that encourages even more wrap around than if it were vertical. If you look at the image, it is very high key, it's very bright, but don't be afraid to do that if that's the mood that you're going for. I shot everything at 1/200 of a second, f11 ISO 200, and I like this warm feel. I might even warm it up a little bit more in post. So now, it's time to move on to a totally different interpretation of this look. Okay, so if we're going in the low-key direction, then I automatically know I need to start getting rid of some of the high key elements. So let me get rid of the softbox first, because I know I'm gonna be shooting on a darker background. So let me just take this out of the equation. Okay, so I know I'm going to want more shadows, and I don't think I want the hard light anymore. So let me take off the zoom reflector, and I know I'm gonna pull the light source further off to the side. So let me see. Okay, so that's creating more shadows. That looks good. And I probably don't want the reflector anymore, but we'll see. So I'm going to start with nothing and then build it back up. All right, so let me take a look with the raw light with lots of shadows. And of course, my exposure is going to be way off, but well, maybe not too far off. Okay, so much more low key in this shot, but I think the light, I want to go totally different than the other one. I think the light's too shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to an octabox. And so with a 3-foot octabox on, go a little bit softer, maybe something that's a little bit more painterly in its look. Okay, so I've got my softer light, and I'm probably going to underexpose on purpose. Let's see, and I'm just figuring this out as I go along. Let's get a little bit higher. And of course, because now I put on a softer modifier with more diffusion, it's going to get a bit darker. So I just turned up the power of the light a bit. Okay, so now it's really soft. But let me try underexposing it and see if I like the mood. Maybe underexposing it looks, yeah, underexposing it looks good and moody. So I like the placement of the 3-foot octa to the right-hand side because it creates a little bit more shape and drama. I like the soft light of it. It looks kind of like a painting. But as it stands right now, she's kind of floating in a void, right? I love the texture of it. It's fine, but I think I want another level of interest. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do something for the background light, rim light, maybe a rim light to pop her out, background light to add color, something like that. But I don't wanna go beyond 2 lights. So what I'm gonna try to do is make 1 light do 2 jobs. I'm gonna try to get 1 light to kick a little light on the background, but primarily be a rim light. And because this picture, what is it about? This is low key and it's about gold. So I'm gonna add yellow orange gels. I'm actually gonna mix a yellow and an orange together, so it gives me that warmth. So let's grab the light. And in this case, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take barn doors so that I can restrict where the light hits. I can make it hit her if I want it to, or I can block it off, and the same thing, vice versa for the background. So I've got yellow gels here. Let me turn this light on. And I don't want the background to be like pure yellow. So what I'm gonna do is, this is what I'm seeing, is right now these barn doors are allowing the light to spill on the side of her face. So that'll create kind of a raking rim light across, a little bit of a separation. And then I don't want the background to be pure yellow, so I'm gonna try flagging it off a bit. We'll see, let's see if I have to adjust it. I'm gonna guess on the power. Might need to go up a little, we'll see. All right, so I can see with my bare eye the rim light, and it's not a rim light. Notice it's not even pointed at her, but it's that light kicking out to the side, and so she gets that little yellow highlight on her jawline and on her neck, which is gonna be really nice to emphasize those features and in the color that I'm thinking. So let's test this. All right, cool. So let's take a look at this. So I do have that nice separation. I think maybe I want a tiny bit more. Maybe I'll turn up the power a bit and give her a little bit more rim light. Right now it's a little bit to the side. So if I pull it back, I can allow it to be more of a rim light than a side light. Let me retape this. Let me test it like that. And I'll open up the barn door. I'll let a little more light hit the background. We'll see how it goes. But it's definitely in the tones that I want it to be. Beautiful. Great. Okay, so now it's looking a little bit that moody, like mottled. There's a little bit of texture on it. I like it. The background is not completely even, but I don't mind that. But I do like the light raking across her. So let me shoot that a little bit. I'll do 1 or 2 modifications, but notice the barn doors, I'm opening and closing them to control where the light spills. It doesn't need to be barn doors. It could be pieces of cinefoil, or I could use a black piece of foam core, or anything that controls the spill. So this is perfect. I love the tones. Look really nice. So let me shoot a little bit like that, and maybe I'll adjust the background 1 more time. Okay, perfect. That's beautiful. All right, now can I have you do 1 more lean kind of this way? Yeah, right there. And bring your left shoulder back just a little. Good, perfect. Stick your chin out hard. Good. Great, so I do have a lot of shadow in there, but thankfully that light raking across is giving the separation. Because right now, she's turned hard away from that main light, which means I've got a lot of shadow here. Without it, it falls to black, but that rim light pops her out just a bit. So, okay, let me do a few more of those. Beautiful. And then back towards me. And I'm gonna move this just a bit. It's not quite as far in shadow, like inches, couple of inches is all I need. Good. Shrug that shoulder up real far for me. Then rotate this way just a bit. Good. And shoulder real far. Good. That's perfect. One more time with that neck up. Good. Great. Okay, so let me do one more tweak on that background, and I think we're good to go. So I think what I'll do is I'll turn down the power a bit to make it a little bit more of a subdued background. So I turned it down like a half a stop, but I am gonna bring it in closer to her. So what I'm doing is I'm decreasing the power that reaches the background, but I'm bringing it closer to her, which means more light hits her. All right, retape. All right, so let's try this. Okay, let me test it. I don't know, we'll see if it works. Real quick test. See. So I get a lot more light that hits her. I'm gonna cut the difference. I'm gonna pull it back just a little bit. I think it's a little too strong. Not terrible, but a little bit more of a rim from here. All right, let's test this. And I'm gonna actually flag it off the background more. All right, so I've pointed a little bit more off the background. Got the rim light on her. Let's try it again. And then bend that front arm. And bend this arm back just a little. Good, and then couple towards me. And pull that back, pull back just a little bit. Right there, get more light raking across. Beautiful, one more real low. Okay, love it. So the background in these it's a little bit more subtle. I turned down the power of the light, but I tried to bring it a little bit closer to her so that I have a little bit more separation. Before I wrap this up, there's one more thing that I want to show you, and it's something called your camera's calibration or the camera profiles. I remember I showed you that you could use a color checker, and what a color checker will do is it gives you an actual neutral point to get the right white balance. But you may have seen something called picture styles or picture control in your camera, where you can change something from standard or neutral or monochromatic, and basically it's changing the amount of saturation in the photo, and it's also changing the sharpness and the contrast and things like that. But for your camera profile, it totally changes the way that it sees color. So for example, if you ever have taken a shot in your camera, you look at the back and maybe it's really, really saturated, and then you look at your computer and it comes in and it changes and it just doesn't look that crisp. Maybe the reds aren't as crisp or the yellows aren't as crisp. Usually that's because your camera has a different profile than your computer. When it comes into Lightroom, what it does automatically is it applies something called Adobe Standard. So I'm in the Develop module on the bottom right-hand corner under Camera Calibration, and you can see where it says Profile. By default, it's Adobe Standard. So you take a look at Adobe Standard here, and it's got really nice yellow tones. Like it's nice and it's warm, and it works great. But I just want to show you, when I switch from Adobe Standard to Camera Standard now is a lot more orange, and it has a lot more contrast, and it's a lot darker. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. It depends on what you're trying to say with your shot, but just know that it makes a difference. And so if you've ever looked at your camera and you're seeing colors or contrast or something you like, and then it comes into Lightroom and it doesn't look like that anymore, you might try changing the profile there. And this is a perfect instance where you would want to take a picture of a color checker if you want to have a neutral starting point of the real colors, and then you can make your creative decisions once you've kind of neutralized it out. It gives you a little bit more control. So to summarize what I've done in this set, is I've used a softbox over here, and it's approximately in a loop position, but depends on where she moves her head. Sometimes it goes to split light when I have her lean far forward, but it's soft light. It's a 3-foot octabox, and it's off the side enough to give me a little bit of shape and modeling from the angle and the direction of it. And then I took a second light, and the second light is a zoom reflector with barn doors. And the barn doors help me control where the light spreads. I can open it up, I can close it down. So in this case, I wanted to have a warmer background, so I added yellow gels, and it's yellow layered over 4 times, okay? So it makes it really yellow and warm. But I didn't want the background to be bright yellow. It doesn't fit the low-key mood I was going for. Low-key was shadows. So I flagged a little bit off the background by closing one of the barn doors, so less light hits the background. But then the one closest to my subject, I purposely opened up and then angled the light towards her so it would hit the side of her face and it would rake across her body. So I make one light into 2, a background light as well as a rim light. Now this gives me my low-key setup. In both interpretations of the shot, one, I was going for high key, no shadows, glowy, sunny. I made sure everything in the light and the pose and the styling fit that. But then another interpretation of this would be golden and low key and moody. And so I lit it that way. Both of them are completely right, but both of them are just different interpretations. It depends on your vision as the photographer.